My presentation will be on Plato, and it is by me, Miguel DeLeon. If you see on the photo to your right, this is a photo of Plato, or photo for him back then, because they had no cameras. But now, today, modern day, it's a drawing of Plato of how he would look like. So, short biography on Plato would be that Plato was born in 428 BCE in Athens, the Athens, Greek city-state. And he was born to an Athenian lineage, so he was born in a higher class and not a lower class, his higher class. His father, Astron, died when he was young, so his mother, Petron, remarried to a politician named Paterlips, and which kept their status of high status, and they were rich, thanks to them being a high status, everything. So Plato had access to many books and philosophies and others, which was, pretty good because he was born to a higher class. Plato childhood and until adulthood, he did grow up during the Spartan and Athenian War, which was the Plato War, and it was between 431 to 408 BCE. Plato saw death and carnage when he was young, thanks to the Spartan and Athens War, but he was never considered to go to war because he was a young age. Because if he would have died during the war, we would have never had his philosophies in Socrates and Aristotle. So, thank goodness that he grew up during the Platon War. But in the very end of the Platon War, Sparta did win and defeat the Athens and destroy their empire, in which Plato did see that. Plato did study philosophy, poetry, and gymnastics. He studied philosophies, of course, is his famous philosophies and all that. Poetry and gymnastics. Well, gymnastics for us today was working on our body, but gymnastics on them were basically almost that, but it was like working your soul, your mind, your body. So that's what gymnastics was to them. And poetry, it's going to be the same throughout all the ages. Plato, he did live to be 81, which basically was way older, modern age. And thanks to his age, he got to tell more about his philosophies and theories and made more theories. Which was surprisingly is that at age 81, that is old modern age. So he managed to avoid death of plagues, diseases, and illnesses that plagued the Athenians in that time. So thanks to that, Plato did manage to live to 81, which is a modern age of death. So Plato's influences was Socrates, and Socrates was the teacher of Plato. But until Socrates' death, thanks to the Athenian trial and Athenian government, because the Athenians executed Socrates due to the fact is he was a dangerous man to them, and if they saw Socrates as a very dangerous man, and that need to be get rid of, so they put Socrates on trial, and with that trial, they executed Socrates by forced suicide to make it seem to the public that Socrates committed suicide by himself. But in reality, people that were at the trial, like Plato, know that the Athenian government forced Socrates' execution. It was suicide by force. Plato, we have first account of Socrates' trial by the Athenian government thanks to Plato. Plato did write down his accounts of the trial which is very useful to us, so we can study what happened at the trial and how Plato saw it of his teacher being forced to commit suicide. And if you see in this photo right here, that Plato right here is telling others about Socrates' trial and forced suicide. Here he's telling firsthand to others, people that listened to Socrates too and were friends and followers of Socrates, of what the Athenian government did and how the trial went and what happened to Socrates at the very end. So after Socrates' death, Plato did travel traveled through Egypt, Sicily, and Italian. Like famous places in Italy, Rome. Had many like he. Plato did travel major cities like Egypt, like Alexandria, Egypt, all major cities. Sicily is the boot, like the thing that's getting kicked by Italy. And when Plato traveled to Italy, he traveled major cities. He never traveled to like a back country. No, he traveled to the major cities where he can so he can study with other famous philosophers too. So he went to Florence, Rome, Alexandria. He didn't stick in like the back towns. No, he went to the major cities where the major people were, major philosophers and other people were. But Plato did travel for 12 years, traveling around throughout basically the world for them back time. But considering that it's a small little area, he traveled through like 2 different countries. But for them, it was a major like traveling the world. He studied with other famous philosophers like Artaxerxes and Herodotus. But after traveling after 12 years, he did return back to Athens, his home Greek city-state, and where Socrates was executed. So after traveling for 12 years, he did come back and build an academy in Athens at the age of 40. So Socrates was like already halfway throughout his age of death when he built his own academy. And that academy was basically the first university to ever exist in the world. And after in the university we have today, we take influences after Plato's academy. So thanks to Plato, he still influences today through universities because he was the first one to build a university. And without him building an academy, it would take way longer to find a university. So we can thank Plato for making the first university and us taking the influence after him. So after Plato built his university, Aristotle, now we know today, did travel to Athens to study in Plato's academy at the age of 12. And Aristotle was from the northern Greece. Now, there was many other philosophers came to study at the academy, but Aristotle was the most famous one that we know of because he was more famous than other philosophers we know. After Plato's death, the academy continued to flourish, but in 826, due to the Roman general Sulla, destroyed the academy, Plato's academy, or the first university to ever exist. So we can thank General Sulla for the destruction of the first university. So, if you've seen this photo right here, the classic philosophers is going to be Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. But thanks to all this, Plato was the one that wrote down Socrates. Sorry about that. Socrates' ideas and philosophies because Socrates never wrote down his ideas and philosophies. But thanks to Plato, we do have Socrates' ideas and philosophies. And without Plato, we would have lost Socrates to age of time in history. And Socrates taught Plato, and Plato taught Aristotle, but we most famously know Aristotle because he was the more famous one out of all two, due to the fact is he never clashed with ideas, and he was more pronounced. He was more modern, if you say, compared to Plato and Socrates. So Plato did influence Aristotle with his teachings, but thanks to that, we know Aristotle more than Plato, and Socrates is a little bit more known than Plato himself. But Plato, this is how the teacher and the student went. It was Socrates, then Plato, then Aristotle. It happened in a short time span, not over like years and years. No, it happened in a short time span. After Socrates' death, it was Plato. Then at the age of 17, it was Aristotle. So Plato had many theories throughout his lifetime. One of the theories is the theory of form. The theory of form is very complicated if you don't understand it as well. it's very hard to understand it. It's very hard to get your head wrapped around it, because due to the fact is, if you're not Plato himself, then well, you don't really understand the theory of form. Many scholars try to break it down, like make it manageable to like understand like Plato, but in reality, it is way harder to create the same theory of form like Plato did, because Plato was the original creator, and Plato explained it, but not as like explained it to others. But scholars still don't understand how Plato sees the theory of form. But Plato himself understands a true theory of form and knows what it is, and can make it exact chart or diagram or explain to you perfectly, compared to other scholars that will make mistakes trying to recreate the theory of form for us to understand. So if you see in this photo, this is a little bit like a shorter theory of form, but it's a little harder to understand still. So basically, the theory of form is, let's say there's the world, let's say the Earth. You can touch it. It's physical. It can be changed. It's imperfect because there's always like global warming, droughts, and all that. So it can be changed by humans. It can be changed by nature and all that. But there's another world, or another Earth, if you say, inside the Earth itself, and that is the form. That's what it is. So Plato's, if you read right here, Plato's theory of form is that there is another perfect world that is different from our world, and our world is not perfect and cannot be changed, and it is imperfect, and the other world can't. So basically, right here, if I sum it up for you, there's a world. Our world is imperfect, cannot be changed, but inside that world there's a form, and that form of the Earth is perfect, cannot be changed, is indestructible, but you can't touch it because it's not physical, while our world is material and can be touched. It's the same thing for animals, humans, and objects. There's another form inside of it, and those forms cannot be touched or changed, and they're perfect, while the outside forms can be touched, changed, and all that. And the forms inside of us, or inside of the Earth, are perfect, beautiful. That's what it is. They're beautiful itself. It's just perfection that we cannot touch, but it is there inside of us, or inside of others, or inside of other things. That's what it is. And in this photo here, sensation, what it means by here, by touching, you can touch. If you touch, your touching reveals the material world, but inside the material world, there's a perfection form, the form that cannot be changed or touched. And it cannot be changed, altered, touched, but it is perfect and exists inside the material world. Here's some examples of the theory of form. The rose is imperfect and can wither or be changed different colors, because they can change colors now. The form of the rose inside of the physical rose can't change, can't die, or be manipulated by others or outside force. And same thing for, like I said earlier, the world is physical, can be changed, can grow old, to like, that we'll die, but it'll grow old and be physical, so we can touch. But the form of the world that I'm talking about, or Plato is talking about, is the form of the Earth inside the Earth, and and we cannot touch it. It can never age and can't be changed. So basically, we got the crappier one, and the form inside the Earth is a way better one that we wish we had. So theory of communism is not communism, like Soviet Union and all that. No, it is not communism. Plato's theory of communism is different from communism that we might know of. So it's not, how can I say it? It's not like Karl Marx's communism to overthrow government, everybody's equal. No, Plato's theory of communism is that he believed that without communism, the clash of ideas, interests will happen, because interest, ideas, and family's instinct distracted man from his community surrounding him or he's a part of. So what this means by, basically, what it means that thanks to, family's ideas, instinct, desires, a man is distracted from his community he lives around or lives nearby. Thanks to that, he doesn't clash with ideas of others, ideas of philosophies and all that. So, in shorter terms, he is the man is distracted always by something else. And if he was not distracted, he would have, clashed with ideas, and which would have been really, really bad. And if he would have clashed with ideas, there might have been chaos. So we can thank family's interest and family instincts that there's no clashes between ideas. So yeah, that's what theory of communism is. And still now it is still not communism like we know that it is today. Plato came up with communism, but it has a total different meaning of it. If you see on right here on the photos, of course it's going to be say no to communism, because that communism from us is different, but Plato's communism is better. Another theory that Plato had is theory of education is one. But what is the thing about Plato theory of education intertwines with communism theory? Communism, and it's like two pillars. Let's say two pillars. Without one pillar, the structure on top falls. So the two pillars need to be together. They're intertwined. Without them being intertwined, one fails and the rest fails. So the theory of education, like I said earlier, it is intertwined. But theory of education is that Plato, to cure the society illness, because the cure to society's illness is our logical part, and not anything else. So thanks to us, we're able to process, think for ourselves. Plato sees that as a cure to, society, because society has an illness, but it can only be cured by a logical part that Plato says. And the logical part is thinking, mind processing. You can think, like your brain. That's what he means by. You can think, you can analyze, process. That is what Plato's term is of logical part. Thanks to that, our logical part that Plato sees that as a cure of illnesses, society's illness. And if you see here, it is many people gathering up in one area. And one of the photos, if you see in red, Plato's surrounded by other philosophers. And the other photo is in front of a building in Athens. You could tell because of by the structure and the statue of Athens, Athenia. So the theory of form. Well, this one very complicated a little. Just tap it. It's less complicated than theory of form. The theory of souls. Well, Plato's theory of souls is the soul, but it's divided into three parts. And those are the rational part, the spiritual part, and the appetitive part. So the rational part, like I said earlier, it's the thinking, like your brain. You can think, you can process, you can think. While the spirited part is let's say your heart. It's your heart, you're able to, it's all the stuff you want. It's like desire, not desires, but it's the middle one. It's if you see in this diagram right here, it's spirit, like heart, emotion. It's all that, other stuff like emotion. Passions, what do you love? What do you love this, love that? It's like emotions. It's basically full. It's almost like emotions, but it's in your heart. That's the spirited part, like beliefs and all that. And the appetitive part is your desires, the nasty part of a human. I desire this, I desire that, corruption, lust, greed, all that. That is the aptenian part. And if you see in this photo right here, it is, like I said earlier, it is broken up into three parts. The logos, or in Latin, logos, and that is the brain, intelligence, the mind, the reason, truth, and rational. While the thanos is the heart, and it's the white horse, the spirited emotion, the heart, anger. It's your emotions and your beliefs and spirited. While the eros is a black horse, so it's a nasty one. Is the aptent, hunger, desire, belly, thirst. So basically the rational part is the logos, the spirited part is the thymos, and the aptenian part is the rhodos. So here's further explanation of the theory of form. Theory of soul, sorry about that. The rational part is like the brain. The rational part is like the brain. So you can think, analyze, and it's the ruling class. So it's the upper class, and your brain is higher than the rest of your body. So it is the ruling class. While the spirited part is in Plato's term the military class, so the middle one. and it's your heart. It's because there's bravery that you come over challenges, and strength comes from your heart. While the actinium appetitive part is like the cometer, your stomach, like the very lower class, lower than the military, and it's the nasty part of a human, because there's lust, greed, desire, evil, corruption, all that kind of evil stuff. And it does not have any higher goals, because it cannot have any higher goals. While the rational part does and the spirited part does, but in reality, the rational part has way higher goals than any other part of the soul. Okay, so the book that Platoism and its influences is quite complicated too, because everything about Plato is quite complicated. I wish it was not, but it was. So this book discusses that Platoism goes against someone's moral value, belief system. So it is not due to that reason, Platoism is not studied like Aristotelism. So basically what that's trying to say is, thanks to Plato's ideas and philosophies going against our beliefs, what we believe in, we don't study as much because we don't want to hear anything that goes against our beliefs. But thanks to Aristotelism, that doesn't go against our beliefs, so we're willing to study that more than Platonism. Some of Plato's writings were inside the book Platoism and its influences, like The Republic, which is one of Plato's major books. All the written books that he wrote, some of them were influenced into Plato and its influences. And it says that the soul is more valuable than the body, because sincerely, without the soul, we're just heartless zombies walking. We're alive still, but it's heartless zombies with a warm temperature. But thanks to our soul, we have character, we have emotions, we have many things. I don't know how to say it, feel. We're sincerely, we feel things thanks to our soul. And it also says in Plato and his influences that Plato and Augustine are important because they had effects on the human race and people in the world. Because Plato and his philosophy, he studied how he's able to transcend time, and still with his philosophies he transcends time, and we're able to still study them. While Augustine, what he did in Rome and how he set up the government still helps us today. Like, we set up our government without dictatorship, but how he set it up still. The book also talks about God, which is very weird, because Plato never knew God existed, only the Greek gods, due to the fact is God, we knew about God back then, but Plato didn't, because of the Greek gods where he was born. So basically, the book talks about God and how God understands all, and all knowledge and understanding. And if you were human, we're born without knowledge or rational thinking. But later on, as we grow up, we learn it. We learn knowledge, we know rational thinking. That's what it means by that. God already knows knowledge and rational thinking. He already knows it all. But us humans, we don't. We're born with it. We come out of the womb without it. But thanks to us growing older, we learn it, and we start thinking about it. We start thinking about knowledge, and we start using rational thinking, our rational part of our body. The book talks about Aristotle and also mentions the Hellenistic area. The Hellenistic area most likely is more in Egypt. But also the book talks about Christianity. Christianity didn't exist in Plato's time, but it exists in our time. So what Plato's influences with Christianity, never heard of, but now it happens inside this book. But it uses Christianity to compare Plato's ideas and theories to ours, and what contrasts and what doesn't go together with Christianity. Thanks to that, we're able to understand Plato's ideas a little bit more than we should be. So we can think Christianity, we understand Plato's ideas, theories, because Christianity also has a little bit of Plato's ideas to understand it. So The allegory of the cave. So the allegory cave was written by Plato himself. In the book, it talks about how Socrates didn't write any of his philosophies, ideas, because, he didn't write any. But thanks to Plato, we have his ideas. And with his ideas, we're able to understand Socrates. If Plato didn't exist or wasn't the student of Socrates, we wouldn't have Socrates' ideas, existence. He would be lost to time and history, and we never had his ideas. And thanks to Plato, we do. So we can say thank you, thanks to Plato, thank you for writing down Socrates' ideas. The book also has conversation between Socrates and Plato's brother Glutinus. Glutinus was Socrates' brother. But the conversation between Socrates and Plato's brother Glutinus talked about how philosophy, point of view, and world and others while they were talking to each other in the cave. That's what Socrates and Plato was talking about. And it also talked about how later, between Socrates talked about how God knows what truly is right and what is truly wrong. And that's trying to refer to that we don't know what's truly right, we don't know what's truly wrong. So we're say going down the street, if you steal something, we see that as wrong, but some people might say, oh, he's stealing because he needs it. No. But God sees it as truly wrong. You shouldn't have been doing that. So that's what they mean by that. God knows what truly is right and what truly is wrong. And we don't. And this book also says that Socrates was the teacher of Plato. Of course he was. And Plato was a student. So basically, he was trying to say there was a lineage of student, teacher, student that, were major. The student, teacher, student, the teacher. So Socrates was the original teacher and Plato was the student. Now, after Socrates' death, Plato became the teacher of Aristotle. After Plato's death, Aristotle became the teacher to other philosophers. That's what this book means by the lineage of students and teachers. And in this book, Plato was considered to be more dominant in science and math than any other places because of his philosophies. Plato did use math in his theories and all that to explain the theories, like how shapes are and all that, and use science to explain his theories too and write down theories and math. So that's why Plato is more dominant in science and math than any other one. That is the allegory of the cave summarized in at least a paragraph. So, before the Renaissance, Plato wasn't very studied as much due to the fact that he went against people's beliefs and ideas and what they believed in and values. So, Aristotle was overviewed over Plato more. Aristotle was more studied over Plato much, much more than Plato was, due to the fact that what Plato's ideas and theories go against. So Aristotle, the student, Plato's student, Aristotle was more popular than Plato himself, the teacher, which is quite weird. We never see that because we usually see the teacher more popular than the student. But the Byzantine Empire and the Islamic states studied Plato more in his thoughts and his theories and ideas than the West did. So basically, if you split up Europe into a map, split up wherever the world existed from Europe, North Africa, Middle East, if you split it into half, from Germany, this side and up north, they studied Plato. They studied Aristotle way more than Plato, and he was more famous in the West. But in the East, in the Byzantine Empire, the Islamic states, a little bit up north of Africa, where the Islamic still had control over it, Plato was studied more because they see Plato as more idea, more philosophies. Plato was more studied. So basically, Plato dominated the East and north of Africa, and while Aristotle dominated the West and Britain. That's how it is seen, except Scandinavia, because that's where Vikings were. So if you see here, Aristotle was more dominant in the West. But during the Renaissance, it all changed thanks to due to scholars, but mostly we recognize it due to one man, Petron. If you see in this photo right here, this is Petron. Petron, I don't know what he's doing with his hands, but this is how Petron looked, or a photo of Petron for him, but a drawing for us. So basically, Plato and Plato's theories became more studied during the Renaissance, unlike before the Renaissance, because during the Renaissance, this what happened. Enlightenment happened throughout the whole Europe and all that, throughout the countries or states. So during the Renaissance, Plato was studied way more than any other person because he was more popular and he brought more enlightenment. People saw Plato as a person that would bring enlightenment to them, more knowledge, more, thinking more. And there was many scholars that did help it, but thanks to one scholar, it was Petron, that helped bring Plato's ideas and theories back into light and overtake Aristotle's ideas and theories. They're both studied today, but Plato is now, thanks to Petron, studied more than Aristotle because Petron, he brought Plato back. Basically, brought Plato back to life, but not physically, but philosophy-wise and theory-wise. So we could thank Petron for that for bringing Plato back, or Plato would have barely be known, and we will kind of forget about Plato to history. So we could thank Petron from the Renaissance for that. So these are all my sites. I have many sites. On the very bottom, Taylor E. Platoism and its Influence. That is the book, the publisher and publishers, and when it was made. And this is my other site of the other book, the Allegory of the Cave, and it is it's written by Plato himself. So it's not a secondhand. No, it's Plato himself that was writing it. But thanks to him not being in the modern age, he couldn't publish it himself. So the Enchanted Media published it for him, but gave credit to Plato. So they didn't copyright. And that is the end of my talk of Plato and his theories and forms. Plato will always be known for his philosophy, his ideas of what he done for the world and continues to do for the world. The more we grow older, we will still continue to know Plato because he written down many of his ideas. He has many books. Like one of his famous books are The Republic. You should read it. It's really good. The Republic is one of his famous books. Thanks to that, Plato did write many books in his lifetime, and we can read those now today in a library or ebook. So we can thank Plato for many things. We can thank him for philosophy, his ideas, and everything. But in reality, his theories and forms were hard to study if you were not Plato himself. So this is my slideshow of Plato, and yeah, this is a photo of him.